Hi, I'm Emily,
And I'm Julia.
and this is the Bad Bitch Podcast.
It's a podcast where you bring you some pop culture and hopefully just a discussion around topics which we hope that will bring you further ahead on your journey through life. And it's definitely things that we have come across in our lives. Like all the topics we have definitely experienced. I think that's fair to
We've
say.
dealt with them,
Yeah.
and we've helped hundreds of clients deal
Yeah,
with them.
exactly.
So we're 100% here for you, and I think today's topic is going to be something that resonates with a lot of listeners.
Because it's like it will definitely sneak up on you. It can be a big debilitating thing, or it can even just be a low hum in the background.
Mm-hmm.
But before we get into that, we've obviously got our pop culture segment, which fills me with so much joy.
Oh, really?
Yes. And then our sponsor.
Who's today's sponsor?
So today's sponsor is one of our throwback sponsors. We're so grateful to have them back on board. And we have Rugged, which is a wonderful supplement brand. And the main ethos behind Rugged is helping everyday people just really incorporate the supplements that they actually need and supplements that are evidence-based into their daily routine. They use creatine as one of their products. One of the products which I find really helpful is their collagen, because it's like there's many, you will know better than me, but there's many different types of collagen, and the Rugged supplement has the 5 types of collagen. Not only does it have that, but it has vitamin C, biotin, and hyaluronic acid in it.
Well, this is a great formulation because a lot of people don't understand that especially for things like your bones, but for any kind of tissue matrix in your body to use collagen, it needs vitamin C to glue it to the matrix. So I think it's very easy to be sold supplements online that look great or have good marketing about them, but they've taken a shortcut. They've made it cheap by not blending it with the things that you need for it to actually work. So something I love about Rugged is the formulations are really well thought through. I got the Rugged email this week all about the creatine and the different types of creatine in there. So these are very thoughtful formulations, and it's just so easy to be bamboozled by what's out there. So I think one of the things that's extremely valuable is finding supplement brands that you trust. And I have like 3 or 4 brands that I just go back to over and over again. So when you find a brand you trust and the products taste great, like Rugged, it just becomes a go-to.
100%. And it's like we talk about a lot, and we've talked about it before. It's like when it's the great thing about the supplements is they're very easy to stack into your daily routine. It's kind of hard sometimes to establish a new habit, but when you can just bolt it in, like by adding the the collagen, and they do creatine sachets as well, you can just chuck them in your coffee or your tea on the go. It just makes it really helpful and handy.
Do they do electrolyte sachets?
They do electrolyte tablets.
Perfect. So on the go.
Good. And they've got like they've got a new flavour. They've got a berry now as well. So
I need to try this.
Peachy peach is my favourite. You've got lime, which is kind of like, people describe it as like the green Starburst. Do you remember those from your childbirth?
Oh my God, I do, yes.
So peach, lime and berry now.
I love
very
that.
Nice. And in the hot weather, even if you're like not a sweaty person, like I'm generally not, I've really just leaned into like taking the electrolytes because I felt it's really helped me.
It does make such a difference. I've done that where you feel a bit tired, or I was talking to someone the other day and they were saying, God, this hot weather's really worn me out. And then I just drank a litre of water with electrolytes in it. And I suddenly just felt like myself again.
100%.
And we're calling out to any of our viewers who aren't in the UK. We're on what feels like our 10th heat wave now in a row. Now I'm all for it.
Yeah.
I love the hot weather. It's really interesting how people can react to it really differently. So I actually feel better when it's hot as a person. Some people absolutely suffer. But again, we talked before about how it impacts the body. So being really aware that you're properly hydrated.
100%.
And I think also, I love Rugged, but it's quite masculine packaging, right?
Yes.
But actually, again, when you look at those supplements, women actually need so many of these things. We need the electrolytes to stay hydrated, especially if you're going through perimenopause or menopause and you're sweating more. Creatine, huge impact on helping get over brain fog if you're experiencing any of that, keeping your energy up. Absolutely collagen, obviously skin, hair, nails, but also if your skin, hair and nails aren't looking that good, then also your internal skeleton and your internal tissues are also aging. So taking the collagen is going to make you look great, but actually it's going to help be anti-aging for the whole body. So don't be deterred and think, oh, these supplements are for men. Actually, I think men have been keeping them to themselves.
Yes.
And actually you and I take all these things and we benefit hugely from them. So definitely check out Rugged. We're big fans.
Yeah, and I think with the collagen as well, it's like our wonderful friend of the pod, Camilla Seton, who we talked about, who does the blood test. She has this beautiful way of describing collagen, because not only is it good for your skin, hair and nails, like you said, it's like the scaffolding that supports and builds your joints, which is especially important as you get older or as you're exercising. It's just really, really good and really beneficial.
So when you study nutrition, they use the word matrix a lot. It's like the matrix that your body is built on.
Yeah.
So yeah, big fan. Absolutely no downside to any of these things. Go for it.
Yes, and you can get 15% off if you use the code BADB.
We have a code.
We do have a code.
We have a discount code. That's exciting. Okay, Bad B. That's it. 15% off.
Go get yourself
benefit to being a follower of the podcast.
Hydrated, glowing skin, amazing joints, and less brain fog.
Well, and also, you know, as we get older, we lose muscle mass. It's so much harder to gain it and keep it. Interestingly, when it comes to, obviously that you like look great and you're strong, but when it comes to things like breaking bones, and we know as we get older, women again are more likely to get osteoporosis. One of the things that is the best prevention to breaking a bone, a hip, an elbow, anything, is actually having really strong muscles around it.
Yes.
They found that when you fall, then the muscles protect the joints. So if you've got elderly relatives, if you've got, you know, your mum's out there and she's not able to go to the gym and keep those weights going, these people actually hugely benefit from
100%.
creatine, and you don't need to tell them what it is. You don't need to bamboozle with the science. Just I don't like make up custom powders for people in my life. I'm like, just take a scoop of this every morning. It's got some magnesium in it, some creatine, some collagen. But actually, elderly women hugely benefit from this as well.
Love it. Perfect. So check out Rugged. You can find the link in the show notes, or if you look at www.therugged.co.uk.
Love it.
You can find all these supplements.
Pop culture, darling.
Pop culture, right. So it's very interesting. We'll get into why it's interesting. So on Friday a week ago, it will be every year, obviously, we have the Met Gala. We talked about it at length when it came. In August, before we get into the full cycle of going into the Met Gala, the previous August, they always announce what the exhibition's going to be. And this year, so they announced last Friday what the exhibition is. Got John Galliano. They're going to do an exhibition about him, and they're going to the actual exhibition in the Met Museum, which will be fantastic, is actually going to encapsulate all his work from his college day shows all the way through to like his latest collections.
Oh my God.
It's a very interesting choice, and he's only the third designer that is alive to have like homage paid through the Met Gala.
Well, yeah, I was thinking because there isn't even really like a biopic for him, because he's he's still very much with us.
Yes.
For those people who don't know John Galliano, do you want to explain any of the controversy behind him? Like why it's a controversial pick?
Exactly. It is a very controversial pick. It's really interesting how they have selected him, because it really opens up a discussion as well around people. How do you define them by their worst moments, or do you do you give them a chance at redemption, or like how does sometimes even an interesting discussion as well is like, does creativity and that level of talent always exist with people that interact well in society? You know?
Well, there's a tortured artist.
Exactly that, and you see it a lot. Like you see tortured souls that produce like you think about Amy Winehouse even, and like you see this level of creativity which sometimes goes in hand with just not being able to like function well as a human.
Yes.
But with John Galliano, so obviously he's had a very long, very successful career. Obviously did very iconic things at Dior back in the like 1997 era. He produced that wonderful like print of like the Dior monogram.
Yes. Yeah.
And then he did like the newspaper collection, which obviously every girl who's seen Sex and the City will have seen the newspaper print dress on Carrie Bradshaw. It's like one of her most, if not her most iconic look, I would say. So he did that. Then he obviously went to Givenchy, and then he had his own label. And then there was this incident many years ago, timeline though, doesn't matter, where he was caught on camera making some very anti-Semitic remarks that he says that he doesn't recall. and because he was like blackout drunk.
Right. I was going to say, was he
Yes.
was under the influence?
Yes, under the influence, doesn't recall making them. However, there was, from what I understand, a previous instance where he'd made similar comments but he also didn't recall making these remarks. But he has been like, because of that, like literally he lost his career, he lost his job.
He was fully
Yes.
cancelled at the
Yeah.
time. Not just fully cancelled, he
Yeah.
was, you know, dragged through the press.
Yes.
I mean, the press love a hero and then they love taking down the
Mhm.
hero. And
Mhm.
he'd gone from extremely, like, the real penniless
Yeah.
artiste.
Mhm.
He got discovered.
Mhm.
Suddenly he got on Anna Wintour's radar. I think she actually gave him a grant to get going, and her patronage helped him. So he goes from that kind of penniless to the pinnacle of fashion.
Yes. Mhm.
And so, you know, for the press,
Yes.
the fall from grace is like absolute money spinner for them.
100%. And it has been down to Anna Wintour has been like part of his, like a pivotal role in like his rehabilitation, if you like, into sort of society. And obviously more in recent times, like this year, he's designed a collection for Zara. We saw the return of Gian Galliano at this year's like Met Ball with designers starting, celebrities wearing him more. But it's just, and what, to be fair to the Met Museum, they have framed it as it's going to encapsulate his whole journey. So they will address within
Yes.
the exhibition the controversy.
Did he do a proper apology? Or did he just say, I don't remember it, which is a bit of a cop-out, right?
It is. And it's like, I would need to have a little look at that. I don't know. But he did, in terms of trying to make, reparations. Yes, reparations. He did like some volunteer work in like, and he reached out to the Jewish community and he tried to collaborate with them and sort of like, resurrect his image or make amends for what he'd said. But yes, it is. It will be a very exciting exhibition. But then it's like, it's come with, obviously, should he have it because of the controversy? Should he have it at all because like not many designers have had it? Is he that iconic that he should have this exhibition when only the likes of like YSL have had it before?
I mean, I personally, on the merits of his art, I think yes.
Yes, 100%.
As an artist, 100%. The interesting thing is we're now in this era of nothing being private.
Mm-hmm.
So go back 50 years ago, and then all the time before that. I bet most artists out there have said controversial things. I think partly being an artist and being controversial kind of come together. And by the way, I'm not saying his comments are controversial, they're actually abhorrent.
Yeah.
But having maybe more extreme perspectives or speaking before you think might be more of an artistic trait. But it would never have been captured.
Yeah.
Anything would have been said in the privacy of your own home. So you wouldn't expose yourself. So these days, I just think artists aren't these kind of private creative individuals who then create art and the art is what's out in the public sphere. Their whole lives are out in the public sphere. And so they need to be much more conscious of their image because they can, I mean, he really did almost, it's a miracle he's back because he did almost entirely ruin his career at the time, but also his legacy.
It took a year. It took a long time for him to go back into like Maison Margiela and like to really resurrect. Yeah, it did really, like, in terms of, well, it's hard to say, isn't it? Because obviously what he said was so awful and vile, but he did really pay the price for that and lose pretty much everything. Whereas I don't know, in cancel culture nowadays, whether you get cancelled but you can just come back. You know.
I think it is becoming easier. The thing is, I do believe in redemption and people
100%.
People being able to be properly contrite if they mean it. But then also you get into this dangerous thing where people are just very controversial. Maybe they don't even mean it to get clicks. Then they get cancelled. Then they do the apology tour to get back out there.
Yeah.
And in a way, none of that is authentic. It all becomes part of this dramatic kind of clickbait. Whereas he didn't know he was being recorded. So the sad truth is we know that at that time, in that moment, whatever he was under the influence of, he did mean essentially what he said at that time. Now, I've through my life somehow managed to get to know quite a lot of artists. And I've had artists say to me that who've had difficult relationships with substances, that they couldn't do their art without the drug or the drink or whatever it was, that was part of them being able to tap into their creativity. So again, you get this really interesting duality that it's like a love-hate relationship where they can go through periods where they're sober and not creative. Now, that's not true for everyone. There are some artists who are able to become sober and still be creative. But it does to me, it looks like quite a tough life to be an artist, because especially some of them will say just stuff just comes through them.
Yes.
They're not sat there going, what am I going to paint today? They wake up with an inspiration and a compulsion to have to produce that piece of art. So I don't think the artist's life is easy at all.
100%. No, I've had this conversation a number of times with different friends. It's like it does seem to go just like Olympians. There's almost this like level of like this. You're able to like you hyper focus on your goal. You are cool with making the right. I'm not going to go to my child's christening. Same in the special forces, like I might not be there at the birth of the child because this is it. So it's like you see it in like hyper Olympians, sports people, elite like special operators, and in the artist world, it's like it's kind of like you are making a trade off for like being able to sort of like function well in society, or needing to lean into those more destructive behaviours to allow you to produce the art.
Yeah, fascinating. I'm very glad I was not born as a natural artist. You should see, sometimes in my workshops I make people do self-portraits, and we did one recently with a load of investment bankers. It was great fun.
I love
and
it.
Mine, I think is I've done it several times. Mine was so appalling. Everyone was crying, laughing at how bad it was.
But maybe you should have been a comedian then.
Like maybe in a past life I was the court jester, because I do love. I have no shame. I don't mind being bad at something in front of people, which I guess is the court jester, isn't it?
Yeah.
So yeah, but then I know people in the fashion world, people who do exquisite levels of tapestry and embroidery and what have you, and we actually need these people. They do. It is art. I do think high fashion is absolute art. And the effort these people go into, and the dedication, and it's a craft. And I really believe in trying to keep these crafts going and the importance of that patronage. But I'm just glad that I don't have that level of like obsession and calling, because it takes up so much time and energy and focus, and you're never happy. We did a podcast on perfectionism. These people are absolute perfectionists, and they're tortured with it.
100%. It's like they can't. It gets to that point where they can't rest, or they can't function. They can't eat. They can't sleep. They're just fully obsessed and in their project. But yes, it will be very exciting to see not only will how the exhibition handles the controversy. I'm really excited to see such a huge body of work collected together, and it will also be interesting to see how other designers interpret John Galliano's looks for the celebrities that they dress at the Met Gala. So, yeah, looking forward to seeing what comes out of that one.
I feel a bad B trip to New York coming on so badly. Anyway,
Yeah.
let's move on.
Should we talk about today's topic?
Yes, today we're going to talk about anxiety.
Yes.
And it is such an important topic because so many people struggle with it. I think sometimes they don't even know they're struggling with it. And it takes many different shapes and forms, and it has many different causes. But I know, I've had times in my life where I've suffered from extreme anxiety. I've actually suffered from panic attacks, so I know kind of at that level. And then I've also had that situation where you just have this kind of low level hum that you mentioned of anxiety. So today we really want to unpack what causes it, what you can do about it, and how to manage it. But as with all these things, I just want to put a disclaimer. We're not saying anxiety is always bad.
No.
Because fear is a part of your brain trying to risk manage for you. And sometimes when you get that anxiety, that's that instinct that something's up. We've all had it. I remember once being followed home by someone, and literally the moment I saw this person, I felt anxious. Before they'd even seen me, I just knew something was going to go wrong. And that, it was good. I listened to that and I was extremely alert. So it's not to say it's always bad or that you should ever have a life without it, but we want to help give people coping strategies. And as always, we start with understanding. We want to help people understand why we have it and what we can do about it.
I think for sure, because I think it's important that, like you say, it's like you allow your primitive brain and that anxious side to step in when it needs to. Perfect example there. But it's like if in your logical, calm brain, or even like sort of deep within your gut, okay, like things are kind of okay, or like life is kind of ticking along as it should, but I still feel really on edge. And it will show up as like physical symptoms we can talk about as well as panic attacks, like feeling sick, etc. But like it's like if you know in your logical brain things are probably all right, but you still feel that on edge, that sickness, that jittery feeling. Clients sometimes describe to me, it's like, what can we do to move you forward from that?
So where do we start? Because
Oh my gosh, it's
such
huge,
a big
isn't
topic,
it?
isn't it?
I mean, your anxiety, like, if I may, anxiety, what we talk about with my clients and the primitive brain, it's like it comes from that primitive part where that anxiety would, and that primitive brain response of when there's threats to our life. So being followed home back in cave women days, bears, as I always like to talk about, you know, other people trying to steal your food, like real threatening life situations. That was the primary function of like feeling that anxiety, because it's like, shit, something bad is going to happen. We need to prime ourselves so we're either prepared to fight, run away, hide. That's probably
Freeze,
bad.
yeah.
Exactly. So we needed that, and we do need that. But it's like, as we start to build anxiety, which we can get into in a minute, it can start to become more overwhelming. It can start to cloud all our thoughts and our logical thinking. And that is our primitive brain trying to protect us. And as that dials up more, actually, rather than it doing a good job of protecting us, it starts to have the opposite effect, where it starts to run our lives, and our lives perhaps go in a different way.
So in a way, it's helpful in the situations that are closest to our ancestors' situations, like when you're in physical
100%.
danger, for example, or just sensing that something's up with the situation. And I was running a workshop last week on being a confident presenter and overcoming anxiety of public speaking, which is one of people's biggest anxieties. In fact, it's consistently rated as people are more afraid of that than dying, right?
That's really wild.
They're so afraid to have to speak in front of hundreds of people. But because that doesn't help. So if you stand up in front of a group, or even if you're at work and you have to speak at a meeting in front of lots of people, and suddenly they're doing that awful thing where everyone has to introduce themselves at the start, and it starts coming round to you.
Mate, used to get so terrified.
You get the anxiety, right?
Yeah, even speaking in a team that I knew, like,
yeah,
I'd be
they'd
like,
say, do your introduction, right? Everyone hates that. Starts coming around to you, start feeling more anxious. That anxiety response is really unhelpful because there's no bear in the room. So it gets to you and you're meant to speak and sound calm, but you're either ready to fight.
and then word salad
Right,
comes out.
fight. So you're like speaking at 100 miles an hour, you're quite agitated, or you're ready to flee. So you just want to get out of there, and you can even become quite physically, people can't sit still, they're twitching, what have you, or you freeze. And the freeze is the worst one because your brain stops working and you can't even introduce yourself. And you think, oh my God, everyone in this room thinks I'm an idiot. So I can't even describe what my job is. So the problem is that also in situations these days that often make us anxious, more kind of current day challenges, our anxiety response is not actually that helpful.
It's not what would we describe in like the corporate world is, it's not appropriate and proportional.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So then, that's one of those things that sometimes we have to tell our brain, we have to say, brain, I know you're worried about this, but this isn't a bear at the entrance of the cave. So I think that's probably a good place to frame it. Is, first of all, we are primed to be more anxious than we maybe need to be, that women are more physically vulnerable than men. So we are primed to be more anxious than men. We hear time and time again of women having children and suddenly their anxiety goes through the roof because they're trying to protect their child from all the threats. And in the old days, you would be in a campfire with 30 other women looking after your baby. The threats would actually be very clear, like they would be another tribe or a lion, but they'd be quite simple and easy to manage. Now the threat is crossing the road, someone stealing your baby. Highly unlikely to happen, but has happened, right? Yeah. You go on a plane.
They're going to fall off the sofa.
They're going to fall off the sofa.
Choke.
You try and travel with them. Is the plane going to come down? You go into someone's house. You see like a marble coffee table. They're going to hit their head. Like
let's not like add in anymore.
Sorry, but no. But I want to make it real for people.
But no, it's so true.
So your brain, especially as a mother, is doing this constant risk assessment. Whereas before, every day would be the same. The risk would be the same. Now our brain's trying to risk assess across lots of different threats. Then we listen to the news. It's telling us that the world's going to end. So I think, again, women particularly can have this challenge where they're, what I'm trying to say here is the society we're in is priming us to be anxious, right? Then on top of that, we've got to look at nutrition, and we can come back to that, but our sleep habits, our food, what habits are we doing that are just raising our anxiety base levels? If nothing else changes outside, we can do things that just make us feel anxious because they produce adrenaline in our bodies. Then we've got the mental aspect, which you're absolutely expert in, of how we're perceiving things and what our brain's doing with that, and how thought processes can massively amplify anxiety, but can also take it down. And then there's what happens when really, really stressful things just happen.
Yeah.
I mean, I just went through, as you know, probably up there in terms of like top 5 most stressful weeks of my life just happened a couple of weeks ago, of just very bad luck, of very, very stressful things all happening at the same time. And so we can't also just meditate our way through that and say, well, it's all fine. There is also the fact that sometimes we have to deal with really stressful things and our brain and body are having an anxiety response. But the problem with that is it's getting in the way of dealing with it, because I started to procrastinate or find it hard to take action because I went into freeze. You get kind of paralysis. You're so anxious you're not sleeping, or then the next day you're not set up for success. So there is also just the fact that sometimes really, really stressful things happen and you can't not have an anxiety response, but we can look at what are some other healthy ways to manage that and make sure that that's a temporary state. That's not, I used to, when I was younger, I woke up every day, I think for about 3 years straight, feeling incredibly anxious and feeling like that most of the day. And we really want to help people avoid that, because that isn't how we should be living.
Exactly. And I think with anxiety, you can generate it. It's like when you're presented in a real life moment, when you're doing a risk assessment for your child, when you're in a meeting. So those are situations that are actually happening. But your brain is also very good at, because that primitive brain is there to keep you alive, it's going to negatively forecast bad outcomes, things that you're worried about. Your brain is amazing because it can, when we imagine things, they're real for your brain. But when that becomes unhelpful is when you're negatively forecasting bad meetings, difficult, even if it's just difficult journeys, think something you don't want to do, even if it's a low, like, oh God, do I really have to go and do that thing? Do I really have to go and go to the party that I committed to when I was on a high and it all seemed great?
And now I've got to go meet new people and
exactly.
be sociable when I don't feel like it. Yeah.
Exactly. So we can start to build anxiety in our brain just by imagining future events. And it's like, how do we look to bring ourselves back into the present that helps us then come away from generating more anxiety?
So I want to come to that point early about sometimes some of the mental tricks to manage ourselves. But I think it's helpful, again, for people listening, if we just start with what are some of the symptoms that anxiety has become an issue, that it's not just the normal situation happens, I have an anxiety response, but then I feel fine. So I'll start with some of them, if that's okay.
Yeah, I was going to say, why don't you describe for the listeners, because again, we said we always cover topics that we've been through. Describe how you felt when you woke up anxious.
Well, one of the things is I feel like I have to do a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost like when you've had too much caffeine. Like I feel like I have to do a lot. So I'm physically agitated. I can't sit still. And yet I can't get a lot done. So in a high state of anxiety, I feel quite agitated. My heart's going. But then I can't be calm and focused. So it's like struggling to focus. When I used to have panic attacks, I used to get travel anxiety. And if you've never experienced that, it's sometimes quite hard to imagine. But if you're someone who can have a panic attack on a plane or on a tube or on a bus, then the minute you realise you're going to have to travel somewhere, you start to feel the anxiety response. So I would start to feel anxious just thinking about a trip. Someone would say, oh, let's go on a holiday. And I love that. And then my brain would immediately go, yeah, but you're going to have to do the travel. And so I would just kind of have this, I'd start to feel like a bit hot and uncomfortable. And then when you have a full panic attack, it's a really weird thing to say you can feel like you're dying, because you know rationally you are not dying, you're not having a heart attack. But the feeling of absolute dread that came with it, I would just suddenly, I'd go into a cold sweat, I'd feel absolute dread. And I'll talk kind of how I got myself out of that. But I think, those are kind of extreme scenarios. I think more of the day-to-day, it's things like you can't relax. You can't sit down and put down your to-do list or whatever it is and just do one thing at a time and just watch a TV show or chat to someone. The feeling that you need to keep doing things because your brain's telling you there's a problem, you have to keep addressing it. So one of the problems I had to deal with last week, I had to hand it over to some other people, but then it was very hard to just sit around and trust that was happening. I just felt like I have to keep working, I have to keep doing things. All this disaster is going to happen. So not being able to relax, paranoia. And I don't mean paranoia that you just think everyone's going to murder you, although sometimes stress gets to that point. It's paranoia where an interaction that wouldn't have bothered you before, you suddenly think, oh, I think my friend doesn't like me. Or I thought I'd upset my partner when I hadn't. Because your brain's just suddenly going, like it's just on edge. So it's just looking for the problems. I've had people think they're about to get fired when they're not, just because their anxiety levels are that high. So it's starting to not trust people, not trust situations, not be able to trust yourself. We talked about that with Naomi as well. So I think it's starting to get paranoid, starting to think everything's going to go wrong. And then what happens is, as a way to cope, we start to make our world quite small.
Mm-hmm.
So you go, okay, I don't want to go out because I can't cope with it. And you're starting to restrict your activities. You're like, well, I just want to focus on this thing. And someone's trying to talk to me. I can't even engage in that conversation because I have to keep looking at this risk. So if you start to feel your world shrinking, you're really limiting what you can cope with, what you can do. And when we talk about the stress bucket, one more stressful thing happens and you feel you can't cope. That manifests so differently for people. Some people it's tearfulness. One tiny bad thing goes wrong and they just feel like they're going to cry. Sometimes they can get very angry. One small thing goes wrong. Sometimes I suddenly got to a point where my brain just completely froze because the bucket got full and I just couldn't think. But these are all signs that you've got what we call chronic anxiety. And that means it's long-term, consistent anxiety, because we can cope with short bursts of it. But when it's just constant over a long time, these are symptoms we get. And then if one more stressful thing happens, we're pushed over the edge.
Yeah, and I think it's, as well, it can look like you described beautifully. It's like sometimes, like if you wake up in the morning, that anxiety, you feel very jittery on an edge. Sometimes you feel quite sick. I think also it can be like when you wake up and you're just like, oh my gosh, I feel like I can't do this again,
Yes.
Or you're thinking about your to-do list and all the things and you're just like, it never ends. It's like, it's always going to be this way. And you just feel overwhelmed at the prospect that life is like this now forever. Because that is what your primitive brain will tell you, right? It will tell you that this is it. This is kind of like our wheelhouse now. This is the only way that we gonna live, and it's gonna be shit, basically.
And then let's talk about the physical symptoms. Mm-hmm. A really common one is what we call gastric distress, but it's basically needing to poop all the time. So that can happen, or you can get constipated because your gut is your second brain. So all that anxiety in your brain, you're feeling it in your gut. Heart palpitations, suddenly just physically feeling your heartbeat. Disrupted sleep, not getting to sleep, waking up in the night, classic signs of this. Sometimes people have tremors, they get kind of twitchy eyes, so just any kind of tremors, muscle stiffness, soreness, neck pain, migraines, just headaches in general, skin rashes. So you can start to get, when I was getting anxiety, I would get this sudden absolute rush of like dry, red, itchy skin on my arms. So your body is manifesting that anxiety as well. So it's really worth just listening to those signs, because one of the reasons we want to talk about it is unaddressed. Mm-hmm. Anxiety in the long run, first of all, can lead to chronic stress and depression, which isn't any fun. But physically, anxiety can lead to raised blood pressure, increased inflammation, impaired immune system. Once your immune system is impaired, that's increased risk of infection, but it's also increased risk of things like cancer. So there are very long-term costs to not addressing your anxiety. So even if you think, well, it's okay, or I have my coping mechanisms, right? You've just still got to think about, but in the long run, this is actually costing me. So even if you think I've kind of managed it, I think if you're suffering from chronic anxiety, it's really important to get some help.
Yes, and I think so, because it's like you said as well, it's like, an external help is sometimes, if your primitive brain is really running the show and it's like, this is reality, nothing's ever going to change, you kind of need someone that's emotionally invested or a professional that will help you navigate that, but they're not emotionally in the trenches with you.
Yes.
You want someone to be like that guiding light that's just going to be like, okay, you feel like this now, but we can get you out of it. Because as I say to all my clients, it's like, you've learned to be this way. Your brain has learned to protect you in this way. But just because you've learned this way, and you can just as easy learn another way. It's just about opening that little door, like for the light to come in, to start finding your way out, rather than just being in a room of complete darkness, which it does feel like that, right?
It does, but it's very comforting to have a professional say,
100%.
I've worked with loads of people who've been here before, or even just to give you the space to just talk about it. Sometimes even with my career coaching, clients will say, I just feel much less anxious because I've spoken to an expert, you've reassured me, you've given me an external perspective. I think it's trying to do it on your own. 100%. And again, when you start to shrink the world down and think, well, I just can't talk to anyone about it, it becomes much much more hard to handle. So let's start with the mental strategies then. Clients come to you all the time with anxiety. What are some of the things you're teaching them to do in terms of managing their thought process or behaviour that's helping them overcome the anxiety?
So two things. If it's like anxiety in the moment, I would say, and like if it's like coping with, like, say you're in a meeting and you're starting to feel that anxiety, I like to say, it's like, is this like actually what's happened? Am I really under threat? Or is it actually like, are the stakes a lot lower? Do I actually know what my name is? Do I actually know how long I've been in this? Because usually, right, they want to know your name, what's your name, where are you from?
Oh my God, so cheesy.
And like how long you've been in role, maybe
Yes.
a fun fact. Do you know what the thing that makes my primitive brain go pew, is like, tell me a fun fact about you?
Oh my God.
And it's like,
cringe.
What would you,
My fun fact is I'm having an anxiety attack right now because you've asked me a fun fact. How do you feel about that?
And then again, I would say the stakes to the people who are feeling really anxious, then the stakes are much lower because no one is listening to what you're saying. Everyone's like shitting the bed that they can't find a fun fact about themselves that's going to be appeasing.
And then there's all the fun has just been sucked out of that room immediately.
But yeah, it's like, if pre-prepared, forewarned is forearmed as well. So go into the meeting, think and have a little like sort of pre-check. What are they going to ask me? These kind of things. Do I know my subject area, etc.? Because that really does diminish anxiety. If you're in the room and you're starting to feel the nerves, like that breath, like Naomi talked about beautifully about how the answer's being within you, using that breath is very good for, like, even if it's like a in for 4, out for 6. I like it just like a long inhale and a longer exhale. Very good for calming yourself. Another little technique I work with clients for in the moment is I always like to think of our primitive brain as like a little petulant 3-year-old. So it's like, when children get upset and they start to cry and you're like,
God, they have a full paddy.
Exactly. We're just pre-full paddy. It's like, right, what are we gonna distract them with? A snack, a shiny object? You know how like small children really seem to love keys or something like that?
I once had a very nice watch and I had to give it to a baby son crying on a plane and they put it in their mouth. Very expensive watch. But it was to avoid waking up an entire plane of people.
Perfect.
So, the shiny object worked beautifully.
Exactly. Your primitive brain is the same. It's like, it will start to go, it starts to work up to that cry. And you're like, oh yeah, but look at, and then think about something that's in the room. Be like, look how, it can be even something like, try it, like, look at the flowers, or that's a really nice shirt. I love her lipstick. I must go and like see. To distract your brain from the threat is really there. If you're in a safe environment, you can explore like what in front of you is like distracting and beautiful and remind your brain that you are safe.
That's actually interesting because that is the technique I used and have occasionally started to use when traveling.
Mm-hmm.
So if I start to get anxiety around traveling, I would do a few things. I would move to a different seat or a different spot to remove myself from the anxious version of myself.
Love it.
And then I would start mentally observing, labeling things. And it's without judgment. It's like, there's a woman in a yellow dress. It's not like, oh, that woman looks amazing or that woman looks awful. It's just, woman in a yellow dress. What does that sign say? What colour is this person's shoes? And I'm just giving my brain one thing at a time to think about so it can't be doing whatever the doom spiral is. And it is incredible how well that technique works.
It is very good because it's like your primitive brain is kind of like, the emoji where it's like the acquisitive face with the thumb and the chip. Your brain's doing like the emoji face of like, well, we were freaking out, but now we're like observing our environment and we're not focusing on the perceived bear in the room. So I guess everything's cool, but we'll stay on low key alert. But I guess that everything's fine. And one of the mindfulness techniques that people talk about a lot is, what can you see, what can you hear, what can you smell, what can you taste?
So the 5 senses.
Exactly.
Ask yourself, what is each of my 5 senses telling me right now?
If clients come to me and they're like, if they're saying to me like literally like their brain is having a full-on meltdown and like all the little men in their head are running around like there's a fire and everything's on fire and they're really feeling it, I'm like, just focus on one thing. Tune into what you can hear. Don't worry, and because you don't want to be in that situation where you're like, okay, what's the next thing? I have to try and remember, oh yeah, what do I hear? Oh, okay, what's the next thing? Just focus on just the one thing. What are you hearing right now? Or sight as well. Going back to, I can see a woman in a yellow dress. It's just dialing down and making it accessible to you in that moment to just bring you away, creating distance from your anxious self, whether that's physical, which you did beautifully when you're traveling and moving yourself, creating that distance between your anxious self and yourself that knows you are a badass, you can handle it, and that everything isn't actually on fire. We're just experiencing like an elevated emotional moment.
And I used to have a playlist on my phone, which it shows how recovered I am that I don't even have it anymore, of music that would calm me right down. And I would just put my headphones in and listen to that music.
Beautiful.
So I was priming myself. I also think this is where women can use their caregiving position, because if you start trying to help somebody else, your anxiety goes down. And so many people have also experienced this, where you go to do something that you're nervous about, but someone else is struggling more than you, and you step in to help them, and suddenly you're no longer nervous because you become the adult in the room. You stop being the tantruming child and they become the child. And even if that isn't obviously happening, finding a way to help someone else, say, can I get you a glass of water, or asking someone a question and making the focus about somebody else, again, it distracts that brain that's like, me, everything's going wrong. Even when I'm public speaking, one of the top things I'll do is, if I get nervous, I'll just refocus on the audience. I'm here to help them. What can I do for them? They're probably way more nervous if one of them has to get up and speak, or they're stressed about what's going on for them. How can I help them with that? So where you can take yourself out of yourself, that's a really good distraction technique as well.
100%. I love that. That's really good. And it, like job interviews as well, people get really nervous. One of my clients said it to me the other day, and she's like, I'm really nervous. I was like, don't forget, you are in that interview position because, number one, they must have liked something about you and they need someone for this job. So you've already kind of like, you've got around that first round of gatekeeping of like just submitting your CV. So they must have liked something about you. Also, you're interviewing them just as much as they're interviewing you, because you need to decide whether you want to work there, whether you're going to be happy, whether you think you can add value. So it's like shifting that power dynamic as well, putting yourself in a position of reminding yourself that they're not in this like superior position. Actually, it's like a dialogue, dialing down the stakes.
And I love just reminding yourself, in a month's time, no one's going to care about this or remember it.
Sure.
Just give yourself some perspective. I mean, I can't even remember what happened 3 weeks ago at this point. You just go, oh, at the time it seems terrible, but actually it's not that bad. So we've talked about in the moment strategies when that panic's kicking in, or that sheer anxiety. But how about in between? You've just got this low level anxiety. What are some of the techniques or things people can do to just manage that and reduce that day-to-day anxiety, or things they can do between stressful moments that means when the stressful moment comes, it won't feel so bad?
I love this. Okay, so daily things I would say are really good to do, and it sounds trite, but it really helps our brain, is we do positive things or even just slightly good things. It doesn't matter whether it is just taking a few moments to have a cup of tea in a garden, read a couple of pages in a book. Listening to a playlist is amazing because it's just like, it's very all-encompassing. Doing small, tiny things that redivert your brain away from everything is shit to maybe there's something good about this and life isn't so doom and gloom. Doing those tiny things really help build our resilience over time and help us feel much better. So those are a few little things that we can do just to help a general resilience and help us feel less anxious. I would say if you're really struggling like with your anxiety, talking to a professional, talking to a friend, just saying it out loud, because it's like you have to articulate it. It has to make more sense. Rather than it just being noise and your primitive brain just going, everything's bad, everything's bad. By speaking it out to a professional or a friend, you have to articulate actually what you're going through, which then helps your brain process it.
Yes.
And your brain, even if you've managed to say it out loud, your brain may be in that like highly charged, anxious state where you feel like it's like, because your primitive brain is very hard to convince that the outcome is going to be other than death, the worst case scenario, you know. So it will literally go, it's this way, it's this way, it's this way. No, there's no other options. It's happening this way. When you articulate it and you give it to someone that's invested but not emotionally embroiled in it, they can then say, well, what about this? Or what about that? What about, like, have you thought about it this way? And you might go, oh shit, that is so obvious. Why did I not think about it? So saying it out and then working what is a tiny, small step forward to help you make the situation better. Because giving you, I think anxiety as well, when you feel out of control, when you're on the back foot, primitive brain hates it. If that anxiety starts to step back in, but you can say to yourself, actually, we're doing something, we've done this one small thing to make it better, it starts to make it feel less high stakes.
And also that you've got some control.
Yes.
So one of the things I used to do when I was struggling with this was every week I'd write out my stress list of everything that was stressing me out, big and small. And then I'd look at it and sometimes realise some of it wasn't really rational. But then for each one I'd say, what little thing can I do to mitigate or reduce this? And that was exactly me, first of all, managing the things that were stressful, but also telling my brain I've got a plan. And sometimes I would also go, and I actually did this recently, I said, look, what is the absolute worst that could happen? And actually I was in a situation where the worst that could happen was really bad, but I still thought I can actually handle that. And it's like facing the bear in the face, because we know the bear's like there and we're avoiding looking at it, and that actually makes it worse. And sometimes you have to have a very honest conversation with yourself about, is there a big risk? Is there a big stressful thing happening? Am I really worried that my relationship isn't going to work out? Well, actually look that in the face and, as you said, talk to someone sensible about it. Or if that's too difficult, write about it for yourself, journal about it. But rather than avoiding what you're really worried about, have a solid look at it and maybe write down, well, try not to limit yourself, but what are 3 or 4 different outcomes that could come from this? And how do I feel about each one?
I love that, because it's like anxiety will make you want to hide. You will go to that state where you're just having to react and you're therefore on the back foot and you're perhaps not preparing for life or meetings or the things you need to do very well, which then reinforces the fact that actually things aren't going very well because it's becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy. So when you go from being reactive to proactive, even in a tiny way, like you say, it just really helps start to lift the mood and move away from that anxious state into a place where you can do it, because we know, like, you're a badass, our listeners are badasses, you can do it, but it's just like our brain will convince us otherwise. And it's just showing it in real hard evidence, because our brain loves it, what we're doing to move forward away from where we are.
So the final 3 minutes, I just want to cover the kind of nutrition well-being aspect, because it has a huge impact on this. And
you're going to tell me I can't have caffeine?
Oh, you know what's coming. So think about anxiety like a little fire that's burning, and we need a certain amount of it. But there are things we can do that, like throwing petrol on it, and there are things we can do that are throwing water on it. So let's start with the bit you're going to like. What throws water on it? So what calms down that fire? Really good sleep, which is hard when you feel like anxious, but it's where things like using CBD oil,
magnesium.
Shout
out to Rugged. They do
love
magnesium
for Rugged.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of using an AcuMat. Look it up on Amazon. It's only about £20. Acupressure mat. These things we can do. Taking time to do a bit of yoga, meditation, gentle stretching, watching or listening to comedy, things that make you laugh, lower your anxiety. So loads of things. Just having some downtime, having rest periods in the day, time off your devices. These are all things that can cool the fire down. So don't just be like, well, I'm just anxious. There are things that you're doing that are making it worse or better. So what are the things that are like putting petrol on it? Alcohol, caffeine, too much sugar. And the thing is, when we're anxious, we actually instinctively crave sugar and salt, because your adrenal glands need the salt and you're craving sugar for instant energy to run away from the bear. So I know it's like really hard to say to somebody, don't eat tons of sugar and salt. I think have some, but actually things like vegetables are full of vitamin C, magnesium, tons of nutrients that actually cool the fire down. So you might say, like the other day, I thought, well, I'm going to eat unhealthily, but I'm going to have 5 a day as well. So just ram those vegetables in whether you want them or not. So it's those things that are fueling it. Doing more stressful activities. So even think about your exercise. Doesn't mean don't go to the gym and do weights or what have you, but don't go and do a super intense cycling Peloton spin class. Maybe don't do your interval training right now, because that really gets your heart rate up. Do some I love doing endurance, low heart rate exercise, and actually that's very calming. So really even think about the types of exercise you're doing. Do things that that feel calm instead of ramping it up. As I said, alcohol generally for most people it calms them down in the moment. The next day their anxiety is off the charts. Nicotine, whether you're vaping or smoking, ramps it right up again. So just really be conscious of those things that are throwing fuel on it. Eating too much chocolate, too many sweets. So I know I'm such a killjoy, but actually think if you're feeling really anxious, think even how do I reduce those things even just 10%? And how do I increase the things that put it out, the vegetables, the sleep, what have you, try and increase those 50%. Go for the increase.
Yeah, and I think it's really important because your anxious brain, I know like the listeners and viewers might be like, oh my gosh, it's like if life wasn't shit enough. Julia's like, go and have a cup of tea, listen to your favourite song. Emily's saying I can't have chocolate.
It's a bit Julie Andrews, isn't it?
But your primitive brain will go, well, this is just poo. But
it's fuck it. It's the fuck it.
Exactly.
You just go, I just give up on everything.
Exactly. Because that is what it's like, we know, our brain, we know best. It's like, this is the only outcome. But again, it's like Emily said beautifully just then, even 10%, even if you have like 4 cups of coffee a day and you drink 3 3/4 or 3.5, that is all we mean by 10%. We're looking to turn the tide, not drain the swimming pool of all the things, because turning the tide is how we start to manage these things and start to feel better.
Now, I'll say I suffered from quite extreme anxiety, so I actually have a little bit of caffeine now, but I actually completely gave up, went cold turkey, completely stripped sugar out. I went to a quite extreme place to get better very quickly. So sometimes you can do that, but you need support in place. You need a lot of supplements in place to help your body deal with that. You need to have the time to kind of go through, caffeine's a drug. You can go through quite severe withdrawal. I recommend most people taper off it. I was crazy and went cold turkey, not recommended. But if you're really struggling with anxiety, you might need to make some big moves, but make sure you've got a nutritionist or some health professional who can support your body through that if you're not going to do the gentle approach.
I think, like you said, like, bless you, with the extreme, sometimes when you're in that extreme situation, it does warrant an extreme response, but it's important, like you say, that you've got like the people that I call like life jackets ready there for you.
Yeah.
It's, if you feel like it's a general low level hum, then you can start to turn the tide gently. But if you're in a place where you're like, well, this is just the worst, an extreme situation does sometimes warrant an extreme response. But either way, it's like there is a way back.
There, 100%. I mean, I'm night and day a different person from the person I was then. And as always, with every topic we cover, if you want some help, you can email either of us, reach out to us. We want to help as many people as possible with all these topics, because we know that on the other side of that, you get to be your ultimate bad bitch self.
Exactly. I think that is a really perfect note to end on. So, my darlings, thank you so much. We are so grateful for you joining us as always. As always, if you can like, share, subscribe, that's so helpful to us. And if you want us to cover any topics, just let us know, because we love like doing the topics that serve you and helping you be your best bad bitch self. So thank you so much, and we'll see you next week.